It's getting to be summertime, and if you're thinking about wine, you should be thinking about the wine that gets its name from a color. Or is it a flower? Or is it both? We're going to be talking about that wine on this episode of The Average Wine Enthusiast. Hi there, my name is Mike LaPlante, and I am the Average Wine Enthusiast. This episode, I thought we would talk about a wine that a lot of folks drink in the summertime, and that is Rosé. Why is that? Well, mostly I would think it's because you can chill it. You can serve rosé. It's meant to be served chilled. It doesn't have the same amount of tannins. It's not the same experience as drinking a glass of red wine. And drinking red wine in the summertime, it's not quite as enjoyable as enjoying a glass of rosé that's chilled. Sangria is another good wine experience in the summertime. Some ice and some fruit, yummy! But so I thought we would talk a little bit about rosé. It's kind of like one of those seasonal things that you see at the beginning of summer. You see in liquor stores and wine stores, people pushing the rosé. Before we talk about it, though, this show is about our wine drinking journey, and I have to admit that my early perceptions of rosé were formed when I was a very young man, and we'd go out on weekends, and our girlfriends would want something to drink. They didn't want to drink whiskey or vodka because they were afraid to get too buzzed, or they didn't want to drink beer because they'd be burping. So wine was oftentimes an alternative for girls to drink. Being the guy and maybe a limited budget, we would end up, splitting a bottle or two of rosé with our girlfriend. The rosé that I drank way back then was nowhere near the quality of rosé that I've tasted in the last month or so. So we tend to generalize, and that's what I get a lot of when I start talking wine to people, is I get a generalization. I'll bring up a rosé or a Malbec or something, and I'll oftentimes hear a generalization about whatever that is and say, I don't like whatever because I had it and I didn't like it and I never tried another one. Fair enough, but you should really try another glass, another brand, especially later on in life. Your palates can get developed to appreciate more things, that's for sure. I remember we used to drink stuff like Black Tower and Spumante Bambino, little fizzy, sweet wine. Always got a headache. Wonder why. So I put rosé in that same category. They were sweet and it was just bad. Tastes like bad white wine. What else can we say about rosé? It's meant to be served cold. Drinking a lot in the summertime. You usually drink it in a white wine glass. I don't have many glasses. Not a variety of different glasses. However, I really would like to expand my collection of glasses for different types of wines, but this is the closest thing I could get to a white wine glass. It's a vintage crystal, I think. That's ringing. And so I thought I'd pour a glass of rosé into this kind of glass. Old world versus new world. I only know old world rosé, really. When we went to France, the gamut of rosé that we drank was pretty big. In Provence, where they really do up a good rosé, made mostly with Grenache, I think. This is a Provence rosé. Côte de Provence rosé, 2018, one-year-old wine. And this was the color of most of the rosé that I saw in Provence, and that was decent. I didn't have any bad wine in France when I was there. I'm going to alternate between France and France, and the rosé is no exception. But it ran the gamut. Like I said, I remember we went to a little town called Chagny. We were just buzzing around, checking out markets, and there was one in this town. They had like a big cock in the middle of the town square, which could also be like a theater. It had like steps that surrounded this center stage, so as it were. But anyway, we went to a restaurant there, I remember, and they served their rosé in ceramic pitchers, 20-ounce ceramic pitchers. But they don't use ounces in France. They use centiliters, CLs. So it took a little while for me to convert in my head. It's bad enough you don't speak the language there, but you also got to convert to metric, which you really, I shouldn't. That's what they should be doing in Canada. They embrace the metric system here on so many levels, but I suspect there are the powers that be are keeping these imperial measurements going, such as ounces. I don't mind, but yeah. So there was 20-ounce pitchers of rosé at this restaurant, and for some reason I think we thought we were getting less than what we were, so we each ordered one. So we each drank a pint of rosé, and rosé is nice. I found myself drinking rosé there in the middle of the day, because the alcohol content usually goes somewhere between 11.5 and 13.5%, so you can drink a glass or two of rosé and not really feel the effects of it. But I remember this particular rosé, it was orange. So you felt like you were drinking Tang or something. Very interesting. But it wasn't bad. Like I said, I didn't taste any bad wine in France. Wine is such a part of the culture there. I wish I could describe it, but you can't. It's just so pervasive in these wine regions. Wine or grapevines, as far as the eye can see. When you're out in the agricultural area in those little villages that are in Provence. And when you're in the cities, even in the large metropolitan areas, especially a place like Beaune, which is in Burgundy, like every fourth store is a place to have wine, whether it's a guy selling his own wine that he grew and brought it into the city and he's got a storefront, or a winery, or a place that we went to was the Marché de Vin, and that was a fantastic wine tasting as well. But back to rosé, it's just everywhere. We had rosé in Beaune as well. After visiting the very rainy market day there, I think it was a Saturday, we went to a restaurant, and with my eggs, I'm drinking rosé, and it was delicious. It's that kind of drink. Think of it that way. When you go out or when you go to your liquor cabinet to open up something to drink, rosé is oftentimes way more versatile than a glass of white or a glass of red wine, I think. So how exactly do they make rosé? There are 3 methods that I'm going to talk about. There may be more, but there's 3 here that I'm going to talk about. By far the most common way is the maceration method. And basically what that involves, since rosé is made with grapes that would normally make red wine, you can't make rosé with a Chardonnay grape or a Pinot Gris grape. It's got to be, a Merlot or a Pinot or some other red wine grape. And what they do is they press the grapes, and then the thing that makes red wine, which I know I've talked about this before, the thing that makes red wine is the fact that the juice that comes out of the grape is in contact with the seeds, with the stems, and with the grape skin, most importantly, probably. And when they go to make the red wine, they keep those seeds, stems, and skins, which is known as the must, the grape must. They keep that stuff together for oftentimes months at a time. With making rosé, it's only kept in the juice is only kept in contact with the must for between 2 and 48 hours. So obviously the 2-hour rosé is going to be very light in color, and the 48-hour is going to be darker in color. So that's one method of making rosé. The next method is using, again, red grapes, red wine grapes. They just do a direct pressing. They press the juice out, but at some point the juice is in contact with the skin. Obviously, direct pressing rosé would be extremely light rosé, which sometimes rosé is even mistaken for white wine. It's so light. Odds are those rosés are a result of direct pressing. So there's no time that the juice is just sitting in the grape must. That's direct pressing. Then another method is blending. So you're blending white wine with red wine, and you get rosé. I know in France you can't do that and then call it rosé, because rosé is a French thing, and there's a way you make it, and there's so many rules in France that make you say you can't do this. So blending is not an option as far as making French rosé, and that's what comes into the New World rosé. Is you will find that some of the rosés that are made in California or Australia, they use the blending method, and they'll blend a white wine with a red wine to make a rosé. No rules. You can do whatever you want, as long as you're selling a marketable thing that looks. It is a white wine. It is a red wine, so you can do that. So what else did I want to say about rosé? Drink it cold. You can drink more when it's cold. You put more wine in your mouth, and you tend to end up drinking more. Good thing the alcohol is lower, 11.5 to 13.5. And swirl it around in your mouth and cool off. What do I taste? When I taste this, I taste not quite ripe strawberries. Very, not super ripe. There's no ripe fruity flavor in there. There is like a melon flavor I get. And there is celery and something else. Oh, well, there's some kind of floral note in there as well. Maybe citrus as well. Yeah. And this is not very chilled at all. It's been sitting out of the refrigerator for at least 45 minutes. So, yeah, I'm tasting flavors that you may never taste if you serve this as cold as it was intended to be served. And you also might notice, I also have a bottle here of rosé from Nîmes. It's Costière de Nîmes. I'm not exactly sure what a costière is. It's not a Côte de Nîmes. It's costière. So it's some kind of terroir adjective, I would assume. And it's de Nîmes. And doesn't that sound familiar? It sounds like denim, doesn't it? De Nîmes that's where denim comes from, is from Nîmes, France. That's where they made that textile, I guess you'd call that, wouldn't you? So as you can see, these two wines are different in color. This one is much darker hue of pink, and this is much lighter. But this is what I'm used to seeing as far as rosé goes. It's what we saw the most of in Provence, and a lot of folks in Provence were drinking rosé or pastis, which is another very popular late afternoon drink in the cafes of France. I guess that's all I really wanted to talk about as far as rosés go. What's the takeaway here? Don't make generalizations about wine, because rosé is a fine wine that I would be more than happy to accept a glass of. especially on a hot day, and it's especially when it's cold. So yeah, don't make generalizations. Be open to drinking rosé, and if you can find a rosé from Provence, that's where I would start. This bottle here, like I think I said, it was $30 at the LCBO. Probably the most expensive bottle of rosé in the place, and they were definitely pushing their rosé. They had a table out with nothing but rosés, Chilean, Canadian, France, and it's another one from somewhere else. But yeah, it won't hurt you to try some rosé. Before I leave you on a rosé note, I wanted to also talk about a question I get a lot, and that is, what do you think of boxed wine? So why do I get that question a lot? I think it's because of the folks who consider drinking boxed wine or who have bought boxed wine, and they know that I'm somewhat of a wine enthusiast. They want to know if I would drink boxed wine. I think they want like permission or something to have the ability to drink boxed wine. And I know on probably the first show, it was the first show that I did, I said boxed wine is not, you got to stay away from boxed wine. And I think I reiterated that fact on probably more than one other show. When we were in France, we were there during Easter, which I'll never do that again unless I'm really prepared. But not many places are open. France tends to be a religious place, and even when it's not a holiday, a lot of stores aren't open. A lot of people don't like to work. No, that a lot of who likes to work unless you're doing a job you love. But there's a lot of times when stores are not open in France. But we were in France and we're looking for some wine on Easter Sunday or Easter Monday. From what we were told, Easter Monday was even more important than Easter Sunday in terms of what you were, what you were expected to do in terms of work and, things that are open. And I think Easter Sunday was, you go to church and you really do that aspect of it. But Monday was more for the family. So you spend time with your family. Family's huge there. And that's the whole thing about the work ethic there. French people don't mind working. They want to make sure that family time is also treasured there. So anyway, we're in France. It's Easter Monday, and we're looking for wine. You would think that would be easy. We ended up going to Gigondas, which I knew I wanted to go there because there's a ton of really good wine in Gigondas and very unique wine there. But we're there, and all the wineries are closed. However, there was one cave cellar that was open. And that's what they call the wine places that they sell wine in many parts of France. Caves or caves or caveau. It's a cellar. So anyway, we went to this place, and you could tell that it was kind of like a co-op, I guess you would say. In so much that they probably get wine from different wineries, excess wine or seconds, or I'm not exactly sure what it is. And then they bottle it, label it in their own label, and call it what they will. So I think they just get a whole bunch of wine wholesale that isn't necessarily the top of the line wine, and then they sell it however they want to sell it. The whole bottling of wine in France is just a story in itself, and I'm going to be telling that story very soon on an upcoming show. But so they were selling wine from all the little villages around the village that we were staying at, Sablé. They weren't selling any Sablé wine, but they were selling Vaccaras, they were selling Gigondas, they were selling Rasteau, and they were selling Baume de Venise. So we ended up buying some wine because we needed wine. We had no wine at our place, and gosh darn it, we need to be drinking some wine while we're in France. So we got some of this wine and brought it back. However, one of the people that we were with ended up buying from this place a box of wine from Baume de Venise. Baume de Venise box wine blew my mind. But like I said earlier, I never had wine in France. None of it was bad, including the wine in that box. And as soon as I drank it, all the folks that we were with, especially folks who are familiar with this show, said, "Oh, you got to be telling people that you're drinking wine from a box, Mike." So, yes, I did drink some wine from a box. It was from Baume de Venise. It wasn't spectacular. Not anything to write home about. Body was meh. Flavors were pretty decent, though. And, after you've had a few bottles of decent wine, the box was definitely a place to go that you didn't mind going to. Finish off the night with a couple glasses of boxed Baume de Venise. We ended up dragging that box up to Burgundy, and that's where it stayed. We did not finish that because you're in France and you're drinking all kinds of fantastic wine that can only be found in a bottle. So the box of Baume de Venise never did make a second appearance, as it were. I think there was 3 bottles of wine in that box. And I think he paid 30 euros for it. It did its job for the one night that it got used extensively, and I drank some out of there. So I'm making the confession now. I have drank wine out of a box, but it was good. So can there be other wine in a box that I think is good? Not North America, not New World wine. No siree, I don't think so. I don't think that exists at this point in time, because just the way it's marketed, you can tell that's the stuff they're putting in those boxes is not good stuff. Stuff that probably is in a bottle that is cheap that you shouldn't be drinking either. So anyway, there's my confession. So go out and get yourself a bottle of Rosé. Throw it in the refrigerator and serve it on a nice hot summer day out on the patio. It would go good with a nice bowl of melon or some bocconcini with some tomato and basil and some vinaigrette glaze on top. And enjoy a glass of Rosé. Until next time, folks, I'm Mike LaPlante, and I'm the average wine enthusiast. Salud!